of this presentation. If any of you want it signed and mailed to you, I'll be doing a special of $18, which will cover tax and shipping. And so just let me know if you would like me to sign one for you, and we'll get it sent out to you. The purpose of telling my story is it started when all 4 of my children were diagnosed with a rare, life-threatening, multi-systemic disease called myotonic dystrophy. It's a genetic disease, and it's supposed to be passed on 50%. We passed it on at 100%, but we didn't even know that we had it in our family. That's one of the unique traits of it. It has a thing called anticipation. That's something that is in a couple of other diseases, such as Fragile X and Huntington's. That's where it gets worse in each generation. So my husband virtually had no symptoms, and we didn't know that it was on our family until our children were diagnosed. They wanted to know which one of us it was through. We suspicioned it was through my husband because his nephew had it. But when they asked the questions about the symptoms, the one big question they always ask is, do you have a lot of fatigue? And I had a lot of fatigue and didn't know why. Come to find out, it's because I was raising these 4 disabled children without knowing they were disabled. So we had to have the testing done on both my husband and I, and we found out that it's through him. It's important to know about it because it can be life-threatening. People's hearts just stop that have this. It affects the electricity of their heart. It also causes complications to any sedating or anesthetic medications. And so it's very important to get it known about. And it doesn't matter if you have the least severe kind of myotonic dystrophy, it's still life-threatening for you. So I hope that you'll get time to learn more about it from my book. But in the meantime, I want to tell you a few things that my journey has taught me. And I'm also very interested in any questions because I've known about this now for so many years that I forget what it is like to not know about it. So I might not know exactly what your questions are. So I'm happy also to answer questions. So we used to have, well, I was raised in a very fundamental environment. I was raised in the Mormon religion, and in the Mormon religion, it's a mother's place to be in the home. And that's all I wanted. And I also wanted to be the best mother possible, which I imagine most people that are approaching motherhood want that. But I went to college and got a degree in family and child relationships in the College of Social Behavioral Science. So I felt like I was the most prepared that I could ever be to have my family and raise my children. There were lots of clues going on as we were having our children, but even the doctors didn't pick up on the clues. All of my children, I had an excess of amniotic fluid. Anytime a baby has a neurological disease in utero, they don't swallow the amniotic fluid as much as a healthy, normal baby would. And so the doctors were always sending me in for testing for gestational diabetes, but nothing ever came back conclusive. And this disease has had so little known about that when I had my babies, and they all had problems at birth, but still nobody told us. And I don't think anybody even knew. So fast forward to 20 years later, and I've been raising these children in this conservative religion, and you have to put your whole, at least we're taught to put our whole life into this religion, and it becomes your whole society. And so I'm doing my best to get my kids to church. Now looking back, it was a big clue. My family literally cannot whisper. They don't have the muscle strength in their lips. They also don't have the control of their breathing mechanisms to be able to whisper. But of course, I didn't know that back then. And I was always frustrated with my children at church because I was always saying to whisper, shh, quiet. And they couldn't do it. And I just thought they were resistant kids. They also had no energy, and I couldn't get them to the church meetings. I kept being in conflict with my background. My babies, and again, I didn't know any of this. They had a weak suck. And so when my oldest was born and I was nursing him 5 months in, and I took him in for a check, the doctor said, this is a failure to thrive baby. You need to put him on formula. So I put him on formula, and come to find out, he had milk allergies. So he was so miserable. So I put him on goat milk thinking that would help. And again, it just wasn't working. And this is when I had a light bulb moment, and I realized that he needed to nurse. He needed to have my milk so that his body didn't have all these reactions. But by then my milk had dried up. And so I got in touch with La Leche League, and they taught me how to bring my milk back in. So now they also taught me that when you have a baby that's failure to thrive, if you put anything else in their mouth, they will suck on that and they'll use their energy up, and they won't have as much energy to suckle at the breast. And so you can never give them anything else. Well, again, this put me in conflict with my religion, because in that day, you couldn't nurse your babies in public, and they literally declared it in my religion. And so I just felt so scandalous because I kept nursing my babies in church. So we just had many, many conflicts, to the point where I eventually left that religion and had to find my own relationship with God. And it was through my beautiful children that I found that. They were so different, and yet I knew their hearts. I knew they were good stuff. And so I just kept working at helping and being with them. And I learned so much more about myself by sacrificing myself. Thank God that my husband had a good paying job so that I could be a stay-at-home mom. So when we got the diagnosis, it was actually a relief, because now I knew what had been going on. Now I had answers, kind of. We had a diagnosis, but the medical profession didn't know very much about myotonic dystrophy. And most doctors have literally never heard of it. So that is part of what has spurred me to write my book, is that we can maybe all become more aware of it. And as you look at my family's picture, you might notice that some of my sons have very long faces. They don't have any muscle tone through here. They also have male pattern baldness. And those are very classic to myotonic dystrophy, but I don't think you could pick them out of a crowd. I don't think, that they would stand out. The tallest one on my right, which I hope is your right, it's on this side. He had speech problems his entire life. He was in speech therapy. So there were some clues that something was going on, but again, we didn't know. So I really learned how to connect, not only with them, but to a higher power. And that's what guided me as we went through this journey without being able to get information from medical specialists. We had a name for it. And I knew, like I told you, that my kids were good stuff, but they were so different from others. They just, like I said, they had no energy. They were asleep a lot of the time, or they were what's called over-focused. They would read a book, and I couldn't even interrupt them. I'd have to physically go touch them. And so I started on my journey of learning about this disease. I went to California to conferences. They were the only place at that time that had conferences on it. Imagine walking into a room. So I've left my husband at home due to the effects. Like I said, he doesn't have a lot of obvious symptoms, but this myotonic muscular dystrophy affects the brain, and it affects the judgment. And so it also creates something called flat affect. So my family, can you imagine at Christmas time giving presents to people that, you know, they're not excited. It's just, oh, thank you. And it was very unfulfilling. And thank goodness, again, that I knew who they were so that I didn't take it personal. But I took so many things personal. I felt like I was such a failure because I couldn't get my kids to conform in society. So I leave my husband at home, who has no perspective of this disease. He just thinks it's Anne on one of her causes. And I take my two youngest to California to this conference, and I manage these two disabled boys through the LAX airport, drive a car to the conference, get there, we're all exhausted, finally find the conference and walk in. And in this room, there was probably 30, 40 people, but looking around, they all looked like my family. They all were sitting lethargically. They had long faces. They were very quiet. Their family members were helping them. I was always accused of being an enabler of my kids. Just let them fail, they'll figure it out. And everybody there was helping their family members. And all of a sudden, I found such relief in finding a community that was just like us.
And I'm sorry to interrupt. Do you have to leave at in 15 minutes? Or
no, I've got until the next hour when I started, the bottom of the hour.
Okay, so we can do questions after your talk then.
Yes. Okay. But am I being too long?
No, actually, we have one question here.
Okay.
Which, and Kevin, a question from Kevin Kursky. How old are your children now, and what is life like for them? How do they feel about their condition? I pray they are okay and accepting.
I would love to jump to that. Yes. So they are all living independently of us, but that does not mean that they are necessarily living independently. They are in subsidized housing. The oldest is 43 and the youngest is 31. And the two oldest, they're the ones over on this side on the left, they are in relationships, long-term relationships. None of my children are choosing to get married because they're on Social Security, and then that would interfere with their financial assistance. The two youngest on the other side of the screen they live together, and they're 6 years apart, but they're so great together. They've said such humorous things as, he completes me, and Mom, we're not getting married yet. They just do so good together. And the two tallest ones both have college degrees. It took them 15 years to graduate, but they were very tenacious. Michael, the one on the right side, graduated in mass communication. And then that's just such irony. He also has a beautiful singing voice, but you cannot understand anything he says because of his inability to manage his breathing and his lips. And so he has an assistive talking device, but he forgets to use it. So his younger brother is his interpreter. They have caregivers that come in and help them wake up. Their wake up and go to sleep buttons are basically broken. And that's one of the worst things about this disease, is the extreme fatigue. They all take multiple stimulants to even get functioning in the day. We keep them all in cell phones because their judgment is so affected. Michael, when he was going to college, called me one day and said he missed the bus. I asked him what happened, and he said he waited on the wrong side of the street. So you can see that there's some inability to manage some of this brain function. If I didn't mention, it affects the frontal temporal lobe. They have white matter in that area of the brain. Back to how they're doing. So Warren, the oldest on the left, he just moved back home last weekend for 4 days because he was just sleeping through the days. And you can imagine what that would do to a relationship. And so his partner told him to basically go back to mommy and let her take care of you. So he came back home. They finally worked it out and he moved back last night. But as my friend said, it takes the most mature of us to make relationships work. And then add all of my kids' complications, and they need so much support. And it's so hard for a partner to understand the kind of support that they need. My only daughter is currently, she's the only one that's been able to successfully work. She's worked since the year 2002 for Marriott Vacation Club. She handles escalated crisis calls, and she loves it, but she's now out on disability, and she's probably going to end up on long-term disability. Is there
what kept you from falling into despair?
I'm sorry, what?
What kept you from falling into despair?
Well, there was lots of that, but one was my connection to my higher power. That went through so much transformation because of leaving my predominant religion, and it's predominant in the culture here too. So it caused us to have a lot of separation from our community, to the point that the local religion told people not to talk to us. So we really had to find who we were inside of ourselves. I had a pretty incredible experience one day where, and this is before I even knew what my kids had. We were at the park, and I lost one of my very favorite earrings. I got home that night and realized it. The next morning, I went back to the park that we were at, and in my mind's eye, it was a huge park, and I could see right where that earring was. And I walked right to it. I bent down and picked it up, nestled down in the grass. I walked back to my car, and I sat in my car, and I pondered, why? An earring's not that important. Why would you show me where my earring was? And the thought that came to me was because it mattered to you. And so I've had that within me. I've had so many miraculous connections, and I've learned how to trust and listen to that higher voice. And I find that connection also through connecting with not only my children, but this myotonic community. I've been a support group facilitator for over 10 years. And these are delightful, simple people, but more than 50% of them live below the poverty line. If you can imagine what it's like to not be able to have your executive functioning of your brain, not be able to make smart decisions, and then the fatigue, and they can't hold down jobs. They're a very lost part of society, unrecognized part of society. And so through my connecting with them, I also find I find purpose, and I find identity. I learned how to find who I am by learning who they are. Are there more questions?
I'd like to add something here. Now, your story, and it's just an incredible story. And I just have to take my hat off to your formidable courage and tenacity and how you've endured over time. But it speaks to your grasp, protection, and love for your children and your family, in these times. And but moreover, I'm feeling that, whatever situations we even find ourselves in now, I can see real strength and power in you, that you've just made up your mind and decided that whatever I'll have to endure and face, I'm going to do it. I'm going to find a way to do it. And that power, I mean, now not everybody has that kind of tenacity. Not everybody has that kind of, and that may be your gift, that you have decided that no matter what I have to overcome, endure, and face, through God's grace and His wisdom and diligence in me, I'll find a way. I think I've said it before, but I'll say it again. You, you said that when you got out of college, that you just wanted to be a good mother and raise your family, and God gave you what you wanted, and you have done it regardless. You just done it. I mean, I'm trying to conjure in my mind. What will it take to grab something like that and just decide I'm holding on. I'm gonna hold on. I'm gonna hold on. And so my hat's off to you there. And and your book. It's a movie of the week.
Thank you, Eldon. Your comment has really made me think, since you said that to me before, that I wanted to be the best mother, and man, I got a challenge.
But you've done it. You've done it. I mean, look at the kids. They're all grown, and they're still growing, and everybody. But now on this ailment, what's the population size of it? Do you know?
Yes, I do know that. And someone asked how my husband feels about being the gene carrier, and that's been hard for him. I don't think it plagues him anymore, but I think that was part of his inability to accept it for a long time, was knowing that it came through him. And another thing that happens is, because it gets worse in each generation, the person that it's through is usually not very affected. And so it's hard for them to gain understanding of why their offspring are so incapable. They kind of think they're just over dramatizing things, not realizing that it's dramatically increased in them. In fact, it does a lot of family isolating. It's very common with this disease. So they just about 3 years ago did a genetic test with 50,000 newborns in New York, a blood spot test, to see how prevalent this is. And it's 1 in 2,100.
Okay.
But only 1 in 8,000 or to 1 in 10,000 ever gets diagnosed. So that means 1 in 5 find out that they have it. And yet they're living with it. And it destroys relationships. There's so many people that their marriages don't survive.
Right.
And then also the lack of inability to be productive. And so part of what I feel like my mission is not only to inform people of this, if you have someone that's dealing with extreme fatigue, to try to learn more about it, but also to educate about how to maneuver the public system. There's so many resources, but you don't get told about them. And you also usually get told no. Since vocational rehab says that you can't go to school part-time if they're going to pay for your education.
Sure.
You can. You just need a doctor's note. They just don't tell you that.
Right.
And so I'd like to be available to help people.
Right.
Also, Ramona, you mentioned, how did I make it through all of this? I finally came up with what I was doing in a explainable way, which I didn't know what I was doing. Yes, if you'll go to my website, it's my name, Ann, middle initial S as in Sam, Woodbury.com. And on there, there's a free download that you can get that explains how I designed my self-care formula. And it tells how you can design your own from this document that you can download on my website. And it's really about going to the basics, and not always trying to reach the top, but remembering that you have to nurture yourself, and it tells you ways and how to figure out where you're abandoning yourself. And so that's how I thrived through all of this. Is I had a mom who believed in me, and no matter what, she always knew, she trusted me like I trust my kids. And so she always helped me remember that I was important and that I needed to take care of myself. And if we could all only have that kind of cheerleader in our lives, and if you don't have that, then you're going to have to be it for yourself. And that's what I think my formula helps.
Well, we have exactly 2 minutes before
Okay.
we bring on Jacqueline. Jacqueline was going to come in, but she's leaving, and so Nancy at 3. But we have 2 minutes to wrap up.
Okay.
Okay. I have another question though. Now, I don't hear you saying at any time, you know, and that's what we end up doing, a lot of us, when we're faced with these conditions. I never heard you say, why me? Why me? Why me? You know, now I mean, and that's a very interesting perspective that way.
Can you,
and how do you get around that?
and can you hold that question, because
No,
we're going to
I
lose,
like that answer.
Jacqueline, and I need Jacqueline to just quickly introduce herself. We'll come back to you, Anne. One second. Yes, Jacqueline, go.
Sorry, this has been absolutely amazing, and your story is amazing. So I'm Jacqueline Kane, a medical intuitive, and I help people uncover their ancestral story that keeps them stuck in physical pain, emotional pain, and the inability to create an income for themselves. And so I do a lot of ancestral energy clearing, and because I believe that there's not many people today walking around who are living their authentic lives. We are all an extension of our ancestors who came before us. And so when we clear the energy, and so, and when you talked about each generation gets worse, I believe that because there's so much emotional energy and just energy that we're carrying from our ancestors before us that we don't even realize we're doing it. And that energy gets compounded each generation that goes by. We're all just adding our emotional unresolved issues onto that pile. So when we clear that energy, people are able to heal their bodies and heal whatever is keeping them stuck. So yeah, I know. So I don't, that's all I really want to say. I know I thought we were going to be on a panel. I don't want to take too much time, but if you're living with physical pain, emotional pain, and the inability to create the life you desire, it could be the ancestral energy that you're clearing. And when we clear that, then things open up. We're able to free our ancestors. We're able to create what we came here in this body to create. So if that resonates with anybody, I can leave my information and
Please.
Yeah, and Jacqueline, we're so delighted that you're here. Can you give us a quick introduction and drop your name? And I know your time is precious, so and then we'll bring you back. We meet in the club and things like that. So I'll connect with you for a longer duration. I know we lost Barbara too, so yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself and drop your contact information in the chat. And I'm so grateful for your time.
Thank you. There's so many amazing people here. So I started looking at my ancestral energy because my mother was born in Sardinia, Italy during World War II, and she raised me with a lot of fear. And I lived my entire life with fear. I just thought everybody had it until I had a conversation with my husband, and he's like, I don't have fear. I don't know what you're talking about. And when I really start investigating where did that fear come from, realizing that my mother grew up in Sardinia, Italy during World War II. Her father was away fighting the war. Her mother was home raising 3 children with German soldiers walking around the tiny village. And the impact that that created in my mother, because nobody talked about their emotions because they were living it. Why talk about it and keep it going? But it was all suppressed inside their bodies. And so I believe that the way to true healing is to release that energy. When we suppress our emotions, we suppress this energy. It comes out as physical pain. Many women that I see who have fibromyalgia, all autoimmune issues, it's the unresolved resentment, the unresolved sadness and grief that they're carrying, that they don't even know they're carrying. It's just who they are. And so recently I heard that Bernie Siegel talked about cancer has to do with resentment, that many of his cancer patients had resentment. So when we look at the underlying emotions, we're able to heal the body in a completely faster way. And many of us have had ancestors who have had it really, really tough, and they struggled and they weren't able to heal. But we're in a new energy. We're in a new lifetime where we do get to talk about our emotions and move past it. So I'll leave my information, and if anybody wants to follow up, I would love to chat and hear what's going on with you.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline.
Thank you.
Do we have
Yeah,
some time for questions? Claire, for Doreen
no,
and...
No, not yet. We're coming to questions. I'm losing people. So Nancy, tell us your story.
There? I don't see Nancy.
I heard Nancy's story when I first met Nancy. And this story changed my life because this woman is so active in the church, so active in the community, so active, and she gives 100%. I don't think even 1% goes to Nancy. So this is true. Nancy gives 100%. I don't think even 1% goes to Nancy. So I've never met anyone like her that gives so much. So Nancy, tell us your story.
Thank you.
And then I'm going to ask your mother to tell us her story, which is the mother-daughter story.
Well, thank you. I've asked my mother, who is sitting right next to me, to jump in at any time that I leave something out, because this story is amazing, but some things maybe still might not be fresh on my mind. My story is I am a survivor of a brain aneurysm. This happened approximately I think it was been 17 years ago at this time. I went to work that day on a beautiful day and had a good day. And the uniqueness of that particular day, though, I had been working with my door closed, which is something I didn't normally do. One of my staff persons came in and wanted to know if we could go to lunch, and I said yes. And another unique fact of that is that I drove us to where we were going to eat, but we walked that day, which was close to the office. We got to the restaurant, we were seated, we did order our food, and then a package had been delivered to the office that I needed the UPS gentleman to come back and pick up. The UPS man came into the restaurant. I got up to talk to him about it. While standing there, the aneurysm ruptured. My staff person got to me and she said, oh, now I'm telling you what she told me. She said, all I could say to her was my head. They called 911, transported me to the Moore Regional Hospital. Moore Regional Hospital made an assessment, and they felt like I needed to be sent to Chapel Hill. Well, they could not send me until they found a family member. The co-worker with me, she had always heard me talk about a lady with the last name of Moore. She took the telephone book and called every Moore in the telephone book, asking them if they knew me. She got to a dear friend of mine, who was like a sister to me. She said yes. She came to the hospital and told them she was my sister. By her coming and saying that, they sent me to Chapel Hill. I had a great doctor, his name is Dr. Strata Bernard, and they did surgery, and during the surgery, they did see another aneurysm during the time they were trying to repair the one that was that had ruptured. However, they could not get to that particular aneurysm. While staying at Chapel Hill, my mother, of course, came. My husband contacted her, and my mother was taking care of my father, who had Alzheimer's and was living at home. But however, she, with the strength and help of the Lord, was able to get him together. And I had a cousin who was living at that time, and she was driving back and forth to Chapel Hill. And my cousin would drive them back and forth to Chapel Hill every day. So as a result of that, and with the family, my mother just reminded me, the doctor told her when she got to the hospital that I would not live through the night. They were not expecting me to live. And so, yeah, I'm still here, and I'm praising God for his blessing and miracle upon me. As I said, my church family visited every day. They would load the church van, I think it's a 15-passenger van, and they would come every day. Those prayer warriors came, and they prayed, and they prayed, and they were there. To the point that the administrators at the hospital in Chapel Hill had to designate another area for my visitors to come, and because of so many of them coming, other families did not have a place for their people to come. And so as I progressed and did well, they would want to release me for rehabilitation. My husband chose for me to come back to our home area, which was Moore Regional Hospital, or rehab. But my mother decided she and my daddy would move to our home of Pine Bluff, which is right outside of Pinehurst, Southern Pines area, and live in Pine Bluff while I was in rehab at Moore Regional Hospital. Between my husband and my mother, I was spoon fed every day. I couldn't do anything for myself. And they told my mother that I would never walk again. And so that was one of the goals that I had at the rehab place, was to learn to walk. And the challenge was learning how to walk up and down the steps. That was one of the main goals I had. On one particular day, my mother noticed that I wasn't doing as well as I had been. And she mentioned it to the nurse. The nurse informed my doctor. He came and checked and said I needed to go back to Chapel Hill. Nurse tried to call and find a bed for me at the hospital. They said they did not have a bed. And so when the doctor came, he asked the nurse, when is she going? He said, she cannot go because they don't have a bed. He said, give me the phone. He went and called, and he told the people on the phone he was going to sit there until they found a bed for me. When they did find a bed, they said they didn't have a private room and so forth. And so he said, we will take what you have. And thank God when I got there, they did have a private room for me. And so they were able to give me an area where I could go back. And what they found was that the area had not been cleaned up well within my brain. And so I wasn't progressing because of that. And so after they went in and did clean up that area better, I started making improvements. And so I found that they sent me back to rehab in Southern Pines. And it wasn't until that point that I realized that I was, I don't know what right word to use, but that I was functioning, that I was alive. I was sitting in a rehab session with other people in the rehab area. And I remember looking and I'm saying, where am I? And I saw these people around me. And when the session was over, I just got up and followed them out. Didn't know where I was going. And I stopped at the nurse's station and they told me where my room was. And my family was in the room when I got there. And so we had there, they also had me to go and stay in a, I call it an apartment kind of situation because I had to relearn everything.
Wow.
How to take care of things, everything.
Nancy, we want to leave some time for questions for all you three wonderful speakers.
But this is an amazing story, Nancy.
Yes,
Thank you for sharing.
So,
and we will share some more over the weekend, but thank you. Yeah, wow. And aren't you glad she's alive? We need to give her a big hand. Yeah. Yeah, and and the amount of things that you do for us every single day. I'm so grateful. Thank you. Yeah. All right. Ramona, back to you.
Yes. So we've had three wonderful speakers. We've had Doreen and Anne and Nancy. So we have about 10 minutes of question time. Anyone wants to ask any questions and then we'll close.
I want to have the question that goes back to Anne and I asked earlier. And I wanted to know, because I never see any or hear you say anything about why me, which is an important testament about what we have to go through and what is important for us to keep in our spirit and mind about. So if you will, please. Thanks, Anne.
Okay. So I can remember a friend of mine complaining, and I can't remember what she was, but she always complained. And in my mind, I thought, you know what? I have so much more to complain about than her. Why don't I try that? So I tried it on her. I didn't feel any better after. So I thought, well, this isn't for me. I'd rather do action. And so that's probably how I came into this world.
Sounds fun.
I have a question.
So quickly show us your book. Quickly show us your book.
Oh, okay.
And if anybody wants to buy the book, Anne is available to do a book signing. So if anybody wants to buy the book today, Anne is willing to do the book signing. So just let her know. All right.
Rainey, you have a question?
Yeah.
Esther has a question too.
Oh,
okay.
I have a question for Doreen.
Yes.
You still here?
Yes, I am.
Do you work with any energy healers, Doreen? Reiki or healing touch or anything? I have a friend who she's a soul sister. She's also a Reiki master, and she works specifically with hospice. And of course, she's been shut down totally hard because of COVID. And I don't know how that's going to pan out at this point. But you can do Reiki long distance. It's all in the field, right? And if you had any interest in talking about that, I'd love to talk with you. And I don't have a shingle out, but I might be willing to do something like that too, just as a way to give back.
Yes, I've worked for hospice before, and I'm aware of Reiki being used through that process. I currently have not been, have never worked with a Reiki person myself or for my business, but I would love to talk with you about that because I know it has great healing powers.
Okay, and one of the purposes, so the thing about Reiki being God force energy is that we put it out there and we trust that between the receiver and the sender, who is, super conscious, is God, they're going to figure out what the best result is. And sometimes transition itself can be very healing, and Reiki can ease that as well. And again, as you obviously know, then it can be very, very relaxing at its least. And
stress is one of the major factors that caregivers have to deal with when they're dealing with any form of dementia. And I'm sure it would be very helpful for patients as well.
My husband is with his mom right now. So.
Anne is leaving us. She needs to leave. So if anyone, Anne, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that
Thank you, Anne.
transformational
Any
story.
questions? Any last minute questions? Okay.
And if anyone needs to order the book from Anne, we will email her that person's email, I guess. Right, Anne?
Thanks, Anne.
Thanks, everyone. It's been lovely.
Everybody give her a hand. Everybody give her a hand.
Thank you.
Okay, and Anne, we'll have you back as well. I know you've had a hectic day. I'll see you tomorrow at 4 o'clock or 9 o'clock.
Both.
Anne?
Okay.
Both. Okay. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
So if any of you want to come tomorrow, we are doing awards. And so we're doing it at 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. So if you want to come and support our authors, Rainey's getting an award, Nancy's getting an award, Anne is getting an award, Kevin is here, he's getting an award. So these are amazing books, and that's why we are giving them an award. So Elton, do you want to talk a little bit about the Brightside Empirical Review Award?
Sure. How much time do you have?
2 minutes, because we're
Okay.
getting ready for Jerry.
Okay. Did we hear, we have a couple other people, would they get in? Let me just.
Yes, and we have the next panel ready to go with Frankie. Welcome.
Okay,
Frankie,
okay.
Alyssa,
Bruce
and
Alyssa.
Rami. Yeah,
Okay.
and Ray.
Let me tell you a
Renee.
little bit about. Let me tell you a little
Yeah.
bit about our awards. This is our Brightside Empirical Review Award. Now, this empirical review, we take inventory on quite a few products throughout America and the world. Actually, we have a review process that we evaluate the products based on its innovation. It follows the acronyms. Its innovation, its brilliance, its capacity for use, its acclaim and access. It's how practical the awards are. But when it comes to book reviews, we analyze the books based on how they can change our culture. And the books that we have on deck here, some of these books that enormously will change our culture in a way that's just profound. So you can always count on the books that we've earmarked in some way that have a corner on those. We review all books, but these are more tuned specifically to a few areas of culture. And so when you look at our reviews and when you recognize these books in our empirical review circle, you'll know it'll have a quality about them. And so our authors are just, they're incredible people, and they have brought to space target information and aspects that we think can be incredible to our culture. So that's all I have to say about that. So we have a few people receiving the awards tomorrow. So tune back in. That will be on demand, and we'll go live for those. Otherwise, we'll see the on-demand recording. But we have some other authors who couldn't join us today. A couple of physicians because they have pretty tight schedules, and we had a cardiovascular surgeon and a gastrointestinal surgeon who just couldn't make it because of their surgery schedules. But we expect them to join at another time. And we also had an eye doctor
joining us tomorrow, and an eye doctor as well.
Right. So with that being said, let us move forward to the next segment. So we're running out of time, but this, I mean, what a day! Whoa, what a day!
Yeah, what a day!
What a day! So let's go to the next. Who's up first? Alyssa, you're coming, Alyssa?
No, we've got Jerry.
Jerry.
Alyssa comes next. All right.
So
Jerry, are you ready?
Should I just summarize, Claire?
Yes.
So at least what struck me after listening to Anne and Doreen and Nancy, that we may have a million resources out there, but ultimately it's what we have within ourselves. We have to tap into ourselves to transcend those limitations. And for that, we need a village and, interconnections with everyone around us. We cannot live as islands. We have to depend on each other for help and a higher power. So that's what I wanted to share.
Well said. I mean, we are a community of people, and the closer we get to that community and the culture of our community and the power we possess and the power that we can share with each other, and we can be an inspiration to each other. As I said earlier, as we began, I said great things are going to happen today, and they're going to happen in you, for you, and through you. And many of our people have brought some incredible things to bear today. And so we're so excited. And so, let's be mindful of what differences we can make for other people. Okay. Coming on deck is Mr. Jerry Burt. He's a mindful business intellect. And he always brings some insightful information and inspirational data and facts. And so we know him pretty well on working on different projects. And so we're happy to have him with us today. So Jerry has an important information he'd like to share with us. So Jerry Burt, please. Also, one thing, he is the owner of